Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, Jade, you want to kick off?
Listen, we're gonna start with a bang here. I've got a question from Macon Lee. Wants to know which of your characters has the best boobs?
Unsurprising as this was something Macon recently brought up to me, I'm gonna go just instinctively with Caroline. Um, but I know that Macon and Monica have other thoughts on that. We have discussed that.
What are the
So,
thoughts?
um, I'll speak for Monica, who's actually here, but she thinks that it would be Brooke because she is the most fuller figured in terms of breast size, and she's correct. Caroline is I just feel like in my mind a little bit smaller, but still like a nice size, And then as I said to Monica, the boob is in the eye of the beholder, literally. So like, what is perfect,
True.
Can't argue with that.
That's true. Are we done with the boobs, Jade?
I
Maybe
think we can move on.
a strange comment in a room full of lesbians. Anyways, Cassie wants to know, was it always your intention to write on the same page after Down to a Science, or did you fall in love with Riley and Gianna while writing Ellie's story?
I had no intention of an on the same page novel. I did just fall in love with them and with Gianna, who I didn't even know for sure was in love with Riley when I wrote Down to a Science. It was just something that I was like, it came to me while I was writing that book that I was like, no, I feel like I can see this now. And it was never my intention to write their book until I was kind of cycling. Originally, this was supposed to be a novella, but I can say that about a lot of ideas I have. So this was supposed to be a novella. And I was like, you know what? They already have such a great relationship. It could be such a quick love story. And then I was like, it just makes it harder. It just makes it even harder. That can't be short. That can't be a short story. There's so many other emotions they have to go through now. Yeah, and then I even did cycle through this idea of like doing a Gianna story, not with Riley. And I was like, I do want to tell Gianna's story at the end of Down to a Science for sure. And I went through this like phase of like, do I want to like put her with someone else? Because like Riley is, in my mind, when I wrote Down to a Science, I was like, Riley is not queer. And then when I contemplated that, I was like, I just can't do that. I was like, what would they do? What would they do without each other? So
That's the question. Can you tell us about the process of writing the story? When you knew that you wanted to write the story and Riley would be the love interest, how did it go?
I was pretty certain early on that it was going to be the mix up was going to happen, and that was always like immediately, I don't know, it was like a very early on like idea that had to be the catalyst, because like there has to be a catalyst for Riley, like she hasn't seen Gianna in any other way for 12 years, so something has to happen for her to all of a sudden look at her and see her a little differently. So from there, it was just kind of figuring out like what event could be that disastrous in a way that like could bring everything she might have thought about herself and their relationship to a head. So I don't know, that idea came to me pretty early on, and I really realized this about myself when I was like looking back at a project I'm working on now, and then Those Who Wait, and then On the Same Page. And in the long run, I was like, I really do love a sex first and then like figuring out other things later a lot of the time story. So I think that's just why that happened in my brain. Yeah, and then originally I was gonna have them like getting together really early on after the mishap with the massage. And then I was like, no, this is way more complicated. So it just went on into the emotional journey.
What would you do if if your best friend would give you a box like that with those instructions?
Well, I mean, okay, if we're thinking, I do have two best friends that are straight. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't, I guess like, and I tried to do it in a way, I tried to write Riley in a way where like I was like, she would do something what I would do, which is I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But like I would probably literally be like, what is this? Um, so that would probably, it would just honestly be super direct in that way, but it would be like a very baffling moment for sure.
We were just talking about, and there were a lot of different reactions, like, what the F? No, not gonna happen. But the reaction that Riley had in the book was so telling. It was like, and all the way her brain works. It was so, you wrote it so beautifully because you understand what happens in her head.
Yeah, I really try to, I say this to Monica all the time when I'm writing, but I'm like, I can't, if I, that's how I get any sort of writer's block, is if I can't see like exactly what's coming next and exactly what's in their head, I just can't write it. And I'm like, if I can't justify their actions or what they're saying, why should anyone else? And I actually wrote this book working really closely, talking through it with Monica last year. And I was like, I have to make this as believable as possible. So I would just send her things and be like, read this. Is this believable? Do you see Riley's thought process here? Do you understand how I'm getting her into the thought process that like maybe it's not so crazy, and does it not really seem crazy?
Jade, do you have another question?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I was just sitting with that answer. I think
Hmm.
Riley's experience is interesting, and I really like hearing your answer to that one because as I was reading it, I was kind of trying it on like, with what I know about Riley, can I understand this experience? Can I understand how she gets to the response that she does? And it is. I mean, she's got this whole like context with Gianna that we're just learning about when this happens. And I think almost the farther I get into the story, the more I understand her reaction and her ability to kind of sit in her own confusion about it, and not have to necessarily demand answers right away or, because they
Mhm.
do have this kind of like safety and security and, love for each other already established. And I guess in that vein, I got a different kind of question from Macon this time. She says,
Okay.
on the same page feels like a new kind of friends to lovers story, one that's compelling, rooted in truth, and never minimizing or diminishing the importance of their friendship. It treats their romance as part of them, not all of them, and in doing so tells a gorgeous and layered story of a love that deepens, grows, adds facets, but doesn't lose or even change its unconditional core. This is a story about more love, not different love or better love, and it made me fall just a bit in love with the idea of friends to lovers as a trope. How conscious of this were you in the writing, or was it natural in the way you think of friends to lovers?
Wow. Megan, I really thought you were just giving me like an amazing blurb for a second. Um, but it was actually a really conscious thought that I had. And not to keep bringing it up, but like I do bounce ideas and I was bouncing ideas off of Monica. So I would be like, she was like, how has Gianna managed through their friendship for so long in love with Riley and still feeling like in love with her and not resentful and not like, how does that happen? And I was just like, I think the first way I described it to her was like how I was just seeing it in my mind, which I say in the book, which is that Gianna just doesn't see their romantic relationship, her romantic feelings for Riley, as something negative, even though yes, maybe it hurt sometimes, or like, but to her it was just this whole sort of love she had for Riley that didn't detract or take anything away from how much she loved her as a person and as the most important person in her life and her best friend. And it was very intentional to keep their friendship at the core, the emotional core of the book, and just grow the romance. And throughout it, I would tell myself several times that like no matter what happens here, and like maybe it's crazy, maybe maybe someone reading this won't be able to relate to it, like it is a crazy, like deep friendship, but like I was like, no matter what happens, I have to write this story with the knowledge that no matter what happens between them and how this falls out, both of them know that they are not going to lose each other. And that was a very intentional way that I wrote it.
And it was beautiful to read. I think one of the questions that I had kind of written down was to kind of ask the group in our book club. I'm not sure we got to it, but was, do you think that you can have a love like that stays platonic? Like, do you think that kind of closeness and friendship can exist in that space? Because I do think you wrote a beautiful friendship, and I think, I love the way you wrote it. I'm glad they got together. It was wonderful, but I probably could have read a whole book about them that was set before that, about their friendship, about, in depth on those things, because they do have such a beautiful relationship. I just want to sneak this other one I got in here because you mentioned that you like to bounce ideas, and you mentioned Monica, and somebody asked if we could expect to see a co-authored book between you and Monica. They really want to know.
Not the first person to ask that. Probably not. I'll say never, but I just don't think Monica and I actually have a really jiving writing style, in that she is way more organized and on top of her shit when like she sits down to do something, and she has deadlines and like gets things to people on time and does things that are great, and that's amazing, and I love that about you, baby. But I wish I was that person. I'm just not. And it's unfortunate for me and everyone who has to work with me, and I can admit that full on. But I wouldn't want to try a relationship like that. I believe we'll make it through, but I wouldn't necessarily want to do it.
So I know I'm supposed to stay on mute, but I figured since I was included in the question, I could answer. I don't think we will ever write a romance novel together, but we did spend an hour and a half on a car ride yesterday workshopping what I think both feel is a pretty good young adult novel that came from probably the most detailed dream I have ever heard somebody repeat to me. So, I mean, that's not off the table as far as I'm concerned.
Ooh.
Well, we'll keep our eyes out for that.
Yeah, keep us posted. I have a question from, let's see, Tabs. Yes. I'm sorry, I've got so many. Catherine, she says, you said like you cannot write if you're not seeing what's gonna happen. Does that mean that you outline the book? Because next thing you say, you're like, I'm chaotic and I don't ever do anything on time. But are you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, absolutely a plotter. I mean, my outlines have outlines, and it's not a joke. I have like something saved on my computer that'll be like real outline, and then I have like the next one that I'll open because I'm like, the real outline's getting too long and too muddled, and it has like 46 pages in it, and I need to start over so I can really just focus on this part of the outline on chapter 10, and then I'll probably end up with like 4 outlines for the same book, and then like at some point when I'm getting really serious, like converge them all together. But it is chaos, but it is plotted chaos. And I guess like I do need to plot it out, because I'll be like, right now I'm writing like chapter 7 in something, and I'm like, in my outline I'm on like chapter 10 or 11, and I'm like, well, I can't continue writing chapter 7, even though I know what's happening in chapters 8 and 9 as well, but like I don't know what's happening in chapter 10 right now. So how can I start writing chapter 7 if I don't know what's happening in chapter 10? So it doesn't really make sense, but that's how my brain works.
That's awesome. The outline has an outline. That's good. So how does it work? Because we were talking about like the depth of character that you create also with Riley, with every character you write. Do you have like storyboards about them? Do you know who's gonna play them in a movie? How does that look? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I do have, I mean, I'll I won't show you this my desk
what?
because it's chaos.
What?
But this like current project I'm working on has like one of my characters has a large family, and like I'm not sure if you can read my chicken scratch, but these are just like 2 long pages covered in like a family outline so that I can reference it when I'm writing scenes that she's in with her family in my outline. And I'm like, she has 6 siblings, so I'll be like, wait, yes, this one. And then I went through one night and like told Monica for like, I don't know, probably like 2 hours, that like the night before I worked for like 6 hours, and I was like, I didn't really write, but I did nail down all of her parents' backstories and her siblings' backstories, and at what ages these things happened, and what careers they do, and what sort of relationship they have with her, and how that's going to play into the book. So I don't think I could write something if I didn't know like every move the character would make in that moment.
I have so many questions now. I'm like, are you ever distracted if you're talking like for 2 hours, going like, oh, I should write a book about that, instead of the person that you're actually working with?
If I'm like really dialed in, and Monica unfortunately maybe could attest to this, like I could spend like and have like 4 or 5 hours just talking about like the same story idea. And when I'm like really telling it, and I'm like, if I'm in the mood, I'm like, I wish I could go write this right now. I wish I was writing down everything I'm saying to you, because I'm so focused in on that idea. And it's like later when I'm supposed to be writing that idea, when I'm like, instead of actually writing their idea, I actually have this idea for the little seed that took place in my head earlier. And instead of writing the thing that I told you about for 5 hours, I'm going to start writing that other random thing that I haven't told anyone about, that's been in my head for one day.
So I was also thinking that you showed us like the little outline on the wall. You know that people are gonna like zoom in, like pause the video and zoom in. So can you just tell us what the next project is?
I mean, there's not much you could glean from this. Yeah, it's I posted the pictures actually on my Patreon. And the first like 3 chapters are there right now. So I'm releasing it right now. I'm releasing it on my Patreon as I go, which actually has kept me up pretty focused, because I'm like, I got to keep doing this. Hoping for a second half of the year release for it. Not a friends to lovers book, so it's a little out of my usual zone. It's a little abnormal for me. So it stars Alyssa Burke, who is in her early 30s and just got her first professor job. And on her first day there, this is literally the first chapter, that she goes there and is going to get like a tour before the year starts, and her girlfriend at home in Maine dumps her. And so she's pretty heartbroken. She's running late to a meeting that she's supposed to have with Whitney Hart, who does not take kindly to tardiness. And also when Alyssa runs to her office, she slams the door open and slams it into Whitney's face. And so it really starts a rough beginning for them. And yeah, I would never say, I just don't think I'm capable of truly writing an Ice Queen. I just I wish I was, because it's my favorite trope to read. I just don't think I am, because it just takes a different art that I don't have. But as much of a character of mine could be, Whitney is. And it's a colleagues with benefits, because they're not quite friends, fake dating book, in which Whitney will accompany Alyssa home to meet her giant family. So that's why I have their whole family tree outlined.
Nice.
That's just, and when can we expect this?
I'm hoping for August or September.
Can we make it
tentatively
July?
titled Little White Lies.
Can we just make it July?
I mean, listen, as soon as it's done being written, I am the person who would be like, great, I should just get it out now.
Okay, we'll talk to Monica to keep you like, Monica?
On it. Yeah, definitely. She totally listens to me with regards to that. So I got this, guys. Yeah.
Good.
I try. I do most of my writing when Monica's asleep.
Let's say. Oh, Cass says, I just want to say my subscription to your my subscription to your Patreon is the best investment I made so far.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
So
I've got a question here
Well,
from
then
Ellie.
like 4 chapters of Little White Lies will be up soon. Sorry.
ooh, so go to the Patreon.
Ellie wants to know where you get all your character names from and if you use like a baby book or something to come up with them.
Basically, you know, the digital age baby book, like babynames.com. I am very much not, I think a lot of writers that like do the really meaningful thing and look up names that have purpose and meaning. I don't do that. Because I really just go on vibe. And I'm like, you know, I don't know. I could cycle through a million names and I'll just scroll through a list of like thousands of names and be like, does that fit the personality I already see in my head? No, it does not. No, it does not. And when I land on one, then I'm like, that's the one that fits the vibe. Like Whitney is not one of my favorite names, but I'm like, yeah, no, I see like an icy vibe from Whitney. Like I'm really digging that. I'm taking that. Riley and Gianna was probably my most interesting book to write because in terms of names, because neither one of those are names I love. I like both of them, but like, they would not be my first like thought to name a character those, because I did just intend for them to be side characters. And a lot of my side character names I choose as like names I like, but probably wouldn't name a main character in a future novel this name, so it's a safe name. And then when I was like, oh no, they're going to be real characters, like I really have to become attached to those names now. And I did. I became very attached to them. So
what is your connection with Finland, like Makinen?
Honestly, I don't have a connection to Finland. I just, when I thought of Gianna, I just created, I don't know, it's this like with every character, when I'm like sitting here and I sit down and I'm like, what's your background? Who are you? Where did you come from? Who made you this way? And the vision I had, I don't even think I explicitly mentioned this in Down to a Science, because, you know, like all of these details I have about my current work in progress, probably half of them won't make it into the book. That's not relevant. And for Gianna, when I wrote her in Down to a Science, like, I don't think I ever mentioned her last name. I don't think I mentioned like any of her backstory, but like I had it loosely in my head that she was European and that like she went to boarding school, and I had these little ideas. And excuse me. And then I was like, that did come down to her name actually, because I named her Gianna just because it like worked. I visualized who I was picturing in Down to a Science. I was like, feels like a Gianna. I'm really vibing with that. And that was where I went with that, because like I said, I wasn't intending for her to be a main character. So I just was like, Gianna, that's her name. And then when I sat down, I was like, Gianna feels like a pretty like Italian name. Gianna doesn't really look stereotypically Italian. And I was like, where am I going with this? And then I had like, I don't know if I even mentioned this in Down to a Science, I knew both of her parents were models. So I was like, let's workshop that. What did their backstory? What was their backstory? And then I don't know, I just did some little research, and I was like, yeah, no, that sounds good. Finland sounds good.
I think your brainstorming is like awesome. I would be like this, like next to the table going, yeah, go. That's cool. That's awesome.
I mean, I would love it. I love talking about my stories and like planning.
Well, and we love reading them, so I'm just mindful for the time, because we always say like half an hour. Do you have a little bit more? Because we have more questions.
I have the time. Yeah.
Great.
If everyone else does, I'm good.
Okay, so if you don't have the time, you have a schedule or you have other plans, thank you for joining us. The whole Q&A will be on YouTube later. I cannot promise exactly when, but hopefully in a few days. Just check our socials and you'll know. Thank you, and just if you will not be offended if you leave because you have to. Okay. Jake.
Speak for yourself.
Okay.
I'm
Haley will be offended. I won't. Good.
I won't either. Sarah has a comment that says, I also love your Patreon. How do we get your books into stores? I'd love to geek out to your books in public to random bookstore patrons.
I'm actually working on that right now, and I don't know how much you want to know about like the behind the process part of it, but like it is super annoying because when you publish on Amazon directly, which is what I do because it's just the easiest way to do things, at least that I know of, and they assign you an ISBN, and that's kind of like an Amazon owned ISBN number. And when I was like, you know what, how do I get my books in bookstores? This process started like a year ago or so. It's fallen off the wayside, and sometimes I pick it up and sometimes I don't. But I truly am in the process right now. And so you then have to go and purchase your own ISBNs to republish paperbacks, which you can use on Amazon. And then you have to like put them up on other websites to give the option for mainstream bookstores to purchase them.
All right.
So, yeah.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, different. I have a question from Lisa. Different books, but what motivated you to bring Sutton and Charlotte all the way through to retirement?
I have said this before, and I don't mean to play favorites to them, but Sutton and Charlotte are just so intensely close to my heart, and are never really far from my head. Especially because I wrote them in like fits and starts over the course of like 2 years, and like over 2 years. Like they were just living in my head for such a longer than like any other characters have ever lived in my head. And I don't know, I was just so attached to them that I was like, I need to know. In the end, you know, it's always like I could have just done one little epilogue or something, but I was like, I need to know. I want to know what happens in their life. I need to write that down. I want to figure that out. And you know, I never intended to publish it, but I think people seem to like it, so I was really excited about that, to get it out there.
Clara asked, will you publish Midnight Rain from Patreon? Because it's so good, it deserves to be out in the world.
Maybe. I don't know. I really wrestle with that. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I should publish that. And I'm like, is it too weird to publish an alternate universe version of an already established book? I don't think like people do that. I've never read that. I've never seen that before.
You can be the first.
So
You make the rules. You
Yeah.
make the rules. You put it out there and people read it, then I guess people do that.
yeah, that's a great point. So I have thought about it. I have wondered, like, maybe I should do it for like a 5-year anniversary of Those Who Wait sort of thing.
That'd be really cool. I've got comments that says, I love you wrote fanfic of your own story. It's too good not to be out in the real world. Please sell merch of your books, especially the stickers you send on Patreon, so my wife and I don't have to fight over them. I've got a couple other questions about your process, like who does your covers, and do you use alpha and beta readers, editors, that sort of thing?
Kat Grace does my covers. I think she's amazing. I try to give her as many shout outs as I can because, like I admitted earlier, I'm an awful person to work with. I mean, I try to be very polite and friendly, but like I will go to her. I'll just like, she's a saint. I will go to her and I'll be like, this is what I'm working on. These are the characters. This is what they look like. These are their personalities. This is the general plot. And then I have no say. I have never picked a design. The cover she's working on right now for a future book, which is actually not Little White Lies, but a different one, I actually did have a say in the design of it because I knew I was feeling very picky. And I was like, it's just not fair for me to be like, she sent me a cover, you know, in the long run, it took a while to do because she sent me a cover and I was like, it wasn't a bad cover. But I was like, it just doesn't really fit what I see. And so I was like, no. And she ended up designing like 4, 5 covers for that book that I was like, I don't really like that. Well, she was amazing. And I just kept being, it was like a months and month long process. So she's amazing. I just sent her an idea and she conceptually comes up with things, and then I'll be like, no, the color choice. Oh, this. But yeah, I really have no say in the covers because of me, because I'm like, I don't know. I'm not visually artistic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have what I imagine would be like a traditional alpha and beta reader situation. I have Monica read everything I write, and like she critiques it, or like writes comments or finds her typos and makes her comments, which she's done for, you know, even before we were together. She's amazing. And I have like occasionally I'll have like other friends read it. I mean, a big part of me is just like, I don't even know how you go about doing these things. When I became like, I jumped from a fan fiction world into the publishing world, and it really was just like, I'm an island here for a while. You know, I didn't really know anyone in the community. Monica befriended me, and like she was like my anchor to like knowing other people. But I was like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do? Reach out to someone, like, do you want to read my books? Like, come on, I'm not gonna do that. Laugh in my face. No. So I didn't really understand like the process of going about doing those things, and at this point I'm too afraid to learn. But I don't really know. And then I'm like, I don't know, do people, and I realize I overthink this because I overthink everything. But I'm like, you know, what if I'm writing these things? I go in my document and then like I have to go change 1,000 things, and like, am I disrupting their reading journey? Like, how does this work? Would they read as I'm writing it? It just, yeah. So like theoretically it would be something nice to have, but I don't even know how to go about that. So I don't have them.
All right. I got to follow up on the covers. Catherine wants to know if you'd ever consider releasing a special edition of Down to a Science with Ellie and Mia on the cover.
Girl, I wish. I can hear Monica laughing in the other room. I actually, because that is part of a different collection that I wasn't the spearheader of, they found a cover designer who did the designs, and at present I don't believe I am supposed to change it, but I would love to in the future do a cover that fits in with my other covers. It's a thought that sits on my mind. So yes, I would like to do that.
I've got a couple more, but Caroline, if you've got a ton of questions, I don't want to take all of it.
No, I'm just like mindful for the time. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I have one, let's see. Okay, Gian and Riley, you have a little epilogue on the end, which is totally sweet and melt-worthy. Where are they now? How big is the team?
What team?
The team that what's the word that you used? The herd. The herd of kids.
I feel like I'm lost. What team? What herd? Who are we talking about?
At the end, she
Gianna-
talks about all of the things that she wants, and they talk about all of the children that they, yeah.
Yes.
Herd.
Okay, sorry, that was totally me. Yeah, I wrote that. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I can see where we
I'm
are.
like, oh my
That's
God,
me.
it was
That's
a
on
good
me.
book.
That's on me. I envision that Riley and Gianna, I do have plans to do a somewhat Forever in a Day-esque follow-up to them, in which we'll be able to see some of these moments. But you know, they are going to get married pretty soon. Like, they don't wait very long. They're not together for even a year before they get married. But what are they going to learn about each other they don't already know? And true to Gianna's word, she is going to have all of their children, because as she knows, Riley does not want to be pregnant, something they've obviously discussed in the past. and they will have 4 children, including a set of twins, the youngest ones. Mostly with Riley's eggs, one with Gianna's. And that's where I do have names for them, but they're on my Patreon somewhere. I wrote them like 3-ish months ago, so I'd have to recall my notes on them. But happily ever after, you know, the way it goes.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Happy chaotic after with 4 kids.
Yes. Yes.
Jade, you had more questions?
I had a couple fun ones, and I think we probably should wrap it up soon, so maybe a good way to end.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Taylor Swift song, and would you write a book around it?
I know it's a cliche answer, but my favorite Taylor Swift song is All Too Well Taylor's version, 10-minute version. And I stand by it though, because long before I knew there was a fan club for All Too Well, when Red was released, it was my favorite song. So I stand by that. I don't think I would ever write a book centered around it, but I do have a few future ideas for like a second chance romance that I think that song could probably apply to most second chance romances in a way, all the hurt feelings and yeah. So yeah, I think that could happen technically.
I don't think it's too surprising that your favorite song is the longest one. I know how long some of your books are.
That's a good point. That's a great point. It could never be too, if it's good, it can't be too long. And honestly, that's my opinion of most things. So
Yeah. Okay. And then this is a hard one, but we'll see. So this is my last question. If you had to pick one favorite character, who is it and why?
out of every book, I presume, not just on the same page.
Right.
Cool, cool, cool. You know, I stand by this answer. It's something I've given in the past. My favorite character is Regan, and it's for multiple reasons. One, she is always fun to write. I never have a dull moment with her. Never a writer's block. She just, I get her, I see her. And two, I think that, as I guess reflected on the same page, I really do value strong friendships and strong, loyal friends. And though Regan can be annoying at times, I think that is her core personality trait. And three, she does have a lot of depth that I just feel, true to my outlines, I know and really appreciate about her, that maybe one day in a Regan-centric book, other people will get to know as well.
I would love that. I love that character. She's one of my favorites.
Love that.
Caroline, did you have any more?
No.
All right.
Well, I can think of more, but I think we should.
Yeah, it's getting
end
late.
for now. Okay. Well, Haley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having me, and for everyone unseen and unspoken that I can't, that I don't know who's here, but thank you for being here.